Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Your home for credible news, reviews, commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name is Luis Jimenez. I'm your host and creator of this fine show. If it's your first time here and you end up staying to the end, please leave us a like, share the show, subscribe, ring the bell. That way you are notified anytime we go live. I want to say hello to everybody out in KGRADB land. We might be changing time slots. We'll get to that in a minute. But thank you guys for being here every Thursday from 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all the tunes that you hear on the show. Their Bandcamp link is in the description below. I want to remind you guys that this show is available on iTunes, Spotify. So if you're on the road, you can still listen to the show. And for the most part, it's pretty censored. Sometimes we do drop an F-bomb here or there. It does happen. But for the most part, you can listen to the show anywhere. Leave us a rate review. It goes a very long way. So thank you for that. Want to thank, of course, my Patreon members. You guys make my world go round. Thank you so damn much. My YouTube members. You guys make my world go round. Thank you so damn much. Super chatters. If you have any hot questions that must be answered, please throw a super chat. Those always go a long way to making sure that this show is fun and stays free. Which, by the way, the whole show's free. There's no paywall here. So enjoy the podcast. Enjoy our Discord, which we will be hanging out after the show. So if you want to come hang out in the Discord, the links for all of this stuff are in the description below. I've got a link tree with everything connected to this show. And then we've also got links for Rather, for Jane, our co-hosts. And we've also got links for the videos that we're going to be talking about today. So let's get into it, shall we? Mr. Rather Squidding.
Hey.
Ms. Jane Kyle. How we doing, guys?
Doing exciting week.
Yeah, feeling pretty UFO-y.
It's been a very, very exciting week. So, man, we got a lot to talk about. We've got 2 movies to cram, 2 movie reviews to cram in the first hour. We've got Rather's Rant debuting, right? Rather, you ready for that?
Yeah, always ready to rant.
Are we ready, though,
Here's
right?
what's really fun, and I don't mean to hype this up, but the intro for your new segment, Rather, was actually submitted by some of your biggest fans.
Doesn't surprise me.
It does have I actually had to edit it a little bit, just the parts that I felt weren't safe for radio. But we'll get to that after the first hour. Yeah, you got some people who like you in a weird way out there, Rather. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Okay. Also, we're gonna break down Senator Mike Gallagher on the Pat McAfee show. I've got a couple of clips. I've actually got about 12 minutes worth of clips that we could get into. But you know the thing with clips, once we play one, we'll talk about it for it feels like 40 minutes sometimes. So hopefully we'll get through most of them. And then I think that's everything. And then we'll also get Jane's opinion on the hearings, because we didn't get to get Jane's opinion on that, and maybe we can dive into that. We got some time. So let's dive into it. All right. Let me kill the music. Let's start with, first of all, we've got 2 films here that are totally different. I feel like they're 2 pretty good contrasting films. But I guess let's start with A Tear in the Sky first. First impressions on A Tear in the Sky. And we got finally, at least for Jane, at the end of that film, we've got confirmation. It is definitely a tear in the sky. It's not a tear in the sky.
There's no Mandela effect.
Yeah, there's no Mandela effect. It is definitely a tear in the sky.
Or there is a Mandela effect. I guess that didn't prove anything. Just
yeah,
proves I'm living in my own Mandela effect universe, essentially.
This is let's not even open that can of worms. But yeah, so first impressions of the films. I'm curious to know what you guys thought.
Yeah, I was impressed. I enjoyed the film. Kind of reminded me of a little bit of like the Ghost Hunter type films where they go in and like, try to find something. But it was, more scientific than the ghost hunting shows. But yeah, it was, I was very impressed that in just 5 days in this little expedition, they're able to find some actual interesting data. It's unclear what this data actually is. I think that we need more information, but yeah, I thought it was a fun show and interesting results.
Yeah, Jane, what did you think? First impression.
Well, it's interesting that you say you thought it was a fun show, because this was a documentary, right? Like a feature length film.
Mhm.
I really liked it. I liked the pace of it. I feel like I want to see a sequel, though, I think is the only thing. I felt like this was more of a TV show. It felt like it could have been broken up into more episodes, and we could have been reviewing it along with Skinwalker Ranch, and I also felt like I wanted a website just like with Skinwalker Ranch where I could go and take a closer look at all the different evidence that they looked at. But yeah, this was a stark, like laughable contrast from Above Top Secret. It was grounded. There really was no manipulation in it. The music was pretty subtle. I mean, sure, there's
well,
really
that's where I'll disagree with you. I don't think
really?
the music. I don't think the music
Maybe
was
it
very
was
subtle on
just
either one of these.
because of I watched Above Top Secret right before, so I think maybe
that could be why.
By comparison, it was so much just like chiller, more low key.
I watched it a couple of weeks ago, so it's not as fresh in my memory, but I thought they did strike a pretty good balance of, kind of building up the spooky kind of paranormal aspects with music, but keeping it grounded by saying, these are just, preliminary results, and, we haven't done the actual data analysis. And I don't think they really, made any outrageous claims about their data or anything. So I thought they struck a good balance between keeping it engaging and grounded.
Yeah, so my first impressions on it were, it felt like a TV show because the producer, the person, first of all, Caroline Corey's been on Ancient Aliens. I'm pretty sure that's where the director comes from. He's also helps either producer direct a few episodes of Ancient Aliens. So it's got that feel to it where it's got the music and the pacing of a TV show, but it's a documentary. The music for me it took me out of a lot of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't like the music very much. I thought it was too much. I think they could have been way more subtle with it. But with that said, I love that. First of all, Caroline Corey is a female director, which is rare. You don't get a lot of those. I think she had, from a production level, I think I would have gone a different direction for the film. I think it almost felt like the movie needed to be a documentary about UAPX and an experiment that they were doing. And I would have liked to have seen them dive deeper into each individual that's on the team, so that way when they speak, it holds more weight. But that's easy for me to say because that's the first time in the first film that I've ever seen attempt to not only get a UFO or a UAP on film with multiple different sensors, but try to triangulate it from 3 different places, which they pretty much did with the end of the film with this anomaly in the sky. They corroborated it with weather data. They corroborated it with people on the ground and on the roof, and they filmed it. And there's a whole bunch of wonderful data, but still, even with that said, still that data needs to be analyzed. Papers need to be written. They like Jeremy and all of those guys pump the brakes on all of that stuff big time. But it is very interesting, and it's the first attempt. So I think either make it a TV show or keep doing it as a documentary, but you need to make a choice. For me, like make a choice between one or the other, because I think the idea is awesome. But if you're going to do it, it needs to be more than 5 days. And you need to figure out a way to coordinate these 3 spots so they actually can communicate with each other. Because I think that's one of the things that from an experiment standpoint, it failed. But that's okay, because I'm not judging them for that. Like, this is not a judgment, because again, nobody's trying to do these things. So from that aspect, I'm like, hats off. Like, imagine what a documentary or a show like this will look like in 2, 5, 10 years when they can really perfect the format of it. It's like I'm watching this HBO show about Julia Child and sort of all the little growing pains that Julia Child and the production company had to go through to produce the very first cooking show ever. It's the same thing with this. Like, how to make science interesting. I wanted more Matthew Shigadis. That dude was reeks hip hop. Like, he had his hat on, cocked sideways. Like, I feel like his favorite band is Beastie Boys. When he was on here, he was cool as hell. Like, I wanted more Shigadis. Like, and his explanations of things and his rationality of things was also just, it was refreshing. It was a refreshing documentary, but I felt like it was produced in a wrong way. It made it feel TV show-esque. It made it feel, I felt like it took away from the seriousness of the experiment, if that makes sense. That's my first impressions.
It was missing something, and
Yeah.
it just needed a few other layers. It needed to have maybe alongside the investigations, maybe find a historic case that you can give a separate new analysis to alongside it, or talk to so it's just, or maybe dig in more to the personal side of, like you said, like UAPX, and bring, because there really was none of that at all. So yeah, it was just, yeah, I get, but I didn't hate it. But also, like, who is this? And we'll ask this about Above Top Secret for. Who is this documentary for? Because if you're not already a believer, I don't know that there was anything in this that was terribly compelling. If you're a skeptic about this, and if you already know everything, yeah, I guess, I mean, I'm trying to think of, is this going to add much to your bank of UFO knowledge right now? I think you have to have, like, the website, right? You have to, in order for it to be valuable to somebody like me, it seems like this was geared more toward, it was awesome seeing all these people we know, Chrissy, Gary, everybody. I need the website to look at the evidence further. I need follow-ups. I want to see continued experiments, because there's no conclusions really at all, right?
Well, yeah, and that's okay. I mean, I'm not looking for conclusions, but yeah, what are you going to say, rather?
Well, yeah, I agree with both of you. I thought it was really cool just seeing the UAPX team, because kind of know them through these interviews. So that was, cool to me. But yeah, in retrospect, they didn't do a great job talking about their, awesome background that these people have. They could have done more of that. And when you talk about TV show versus documentary, you normally kind of think of a documentary as something that's, years in the making, and they probably have some, big conclusion that they're going to, give to you. And we don't really get that. It's more of a just kind of, hey, they're doing something really cool, and we're kind of tagging along with them and seeing what they're doing, which I think would be a great TV show format. Like, it would have been great to see them doing the same sort of setup, doing a 5-day expedition at Skinwalker Ranch versus just, looking at the rocket launches. That would have been great TV in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that would be, you'd either have to do it where each week they go to a different spot and set up the equipment, almost like a traveling show, or you would have to have, I would like to see, let's say, just 3 spots instead of 10 spots, and then have 3 different crews at each spot, and then just bounce between crews, as far as the data they're collecting or things they find.
Yeah, you can have a whole competition show around this that would actually probably be really fruitful and really fun. And
that's actually not a bad. That's actually not a bad idea, Jane Kyle.
Osiris versus Galileo Project.
Yeah, like that would be sick. That's actually that's a pretty good idea, Jane. Again, if there's any History Channel people or any A&E, like, you should be really watching this show to get some dimes on what you should be consider putting into production. But like, hell yeah, that would be awesome. It almost sounds like a BattleBots in a way, but instead of BattleBots, it would be just, literally Sky Hunters, whatever you would have to call the show to get it, people to go, what the hell's that? But I like that idea, and I think that would be super helpful. But but going back to the movie, like, it almost feels like a really long sizzle reel for a TV show. And like, Rather's right. Like, to get like a documentary, usually a documentary is like, it takes years to put together, depending on the subject that you're talking about. So 5 days, I don't know if I'd call it a documentary. It's more just an experiment, like a documented experiment.
And if this was a TV show and they're going out and doing this in different places, I think it'd be valuable to, show these expeditions, even if they don't find anything. They did find something interesting here, but I think that just looking through FLIR cameras and seeing what is out there on just a normal day in a regular spot, I think is very interesting, because none of us are looking, like, our knowledge base and what to expect just looking at a normal sky with FLIR. I don't think any of us really have that intuition for what is normal. So I think just doing these experiments and cataloging what they see is valuable for just kind of establishing a baseline. And I think it's interesting too.
Well, I like Jane's idea that you can like make an open competition and open it to universities and private companies and say, okay, we're doing this competition, 3 different locations. We're going to give you guys each a week to try and catch something, whatever your device is. And then, that would be sick. And then the best one at the end wins. I don't know. And then it'll always be like, sounds like Forged in Fire, but with UFOs. Instead of, a big, wielding machete or something that you have to make. You have to make a machine that captures anomalies in the sky. Could be cool. Could be cool. I'm sorry, Jane, you were going to say something?
Oh, no. I mean, I have plenty of things to say. I can talk about anything.
Well, I mean, where do you want to go next as far as this doc is concerned? We got about 15 more minutes to talk about it. I would share what we like or don't like about it.
Yeah, I'd say the only other kind of, like, I guess 2 things would be, I definitely want to hear more about the men in khakis. It was interesting hearing Gary talk to, I'm sorry, I can't remember the other individuals' names, about like what happens to your testimony and evidence of a UFO after you report it. I mean, I guess he's talked about that before. I hadn't heard of that before, the men in khakis. Maybe, I'm sure he has. And then I just think there's a general theme of, and this comes up again, above top secret, of the history of UFOs, of purportedly detailed craft where we apparently have footage and wreckage and clear entity sightings that's now being dwarfed down to just weird lights that maybe don't indicate aliens at all. Maybe they don't indicate human technology. So I feel like those worlds are very different and they're colliding quite a bit right now. And then watching these 2 documentaries together was like a great, I think, example of that.
The yin and yang.
Yeah, exactly.
It really, well, I mean, it's just like, you can see, the thing I liked about Caroline Corey is that you could see she was really enthusiastic about it. Like, she genuinely cares. She's genuinely trying to do something that nobody's done before, and she did it. Like, I think she did have a hand in doing that. Of course, along with a whole production team and a team of people that helped her do it. And then, you couldn't have this film without UAPX. Like, who else could have done that? Like, and thinking of that too, like, who else, unless, again, like, you had the time and you put out it would have been cool. Maybe next film, if she's thinking about a part 2, we could talk to her about this next week, but maybe next time she can, if she's going to do it in Southern California, like she did here, she can open it up to USC, as UCLA, all the other, universities within the Southern California area, and say, hey, we're having this competition. This is the UAPX team. These are the instruments they have. This is what they're trying to collect. And the best design out of the schools gets to come and be part of the film. That could, and then you could do 2 locations in Southern California, or you can have the same or a better setup at that second location, because that's the one thing. The second location had some decent equipment, but they definitely did not have the same kind of equipment that the setup on the mainland did. And I think part of that was also, this was probably a huge production issue, because they mentioned in the film, when they get to Catalina Island, there's no trucks on there's no cars. It's all golf carts. So they probably got there and went, oh shit, we can't lug this up a mountain and it's too big to fit on a golf cart. How the hell are we going to get these things up there? I have a feeling that happened. I wonder, we should probably ask her that question when she comes on, but that seemed like something that they didn't account for. Like, they didn't know. Oh, they were just trying to get the space rented so they could put their instruments on there. They weren't, I mean, I'm assuming they went there before and they had to get a golf cart to go up to that house. And yeah, I guess it didn't die. I could totally see how that mistake happens too. Like, you're just not thinking about it. You think you'd be able to get a truck and go up to wherever you're shooting. Ooh, yeah, but I don't know. That would have been, like an established second location, and then having the Osiris sort of, patrolling the coast up and down. I think you got a pretty good shot to get something even in a week, but imagine if you did it for a year.
Oh yeah. Totally different documentary.
Totally different documentary.
I mean, we have so many questions answered that were asked in this one.
Yeah.
I'm sure that would have been answered within weeks, even of just more filming.
That would have been a totally different film, but the production cost of that would have been insane.
It's the reality of it.
Mm-hmm. Insane. Absolutely insane. But that would be a real project. Like, that would be a real science project, or endeavor or experiment. Like, you could take a year of doing that and write some substantial papers that would have to be considered by scholars and other professors. They would have to at least read it if there was a good solid year of funding and research and data. And like, that Tic Tac that they showed was pretty cool. I mean, I don't think they ruled it as anything terrestrial, but they definitely weren't like, this is extraterrestrial. This is just something we need more data on. But the actual tear in the sky, they were very hesitant, and I'm happy about this too. They were really hesitant to use the phrase wormhole. They're like, we don't want to say this, but this is kind of what, this is the best thing we have to sort of explain what we're seeing here. But a tear in the sky, as if something is interacting with it. I mean, it definitely was strange, but like you said, and I agree, and so do the entire UAPX team agrees that they need more data. They need to repeat the experiment, and they need to be able to, I think, coordinate it and triangulate it from 3 places is so important. But after seeing this film, I could see, I see how that's hard now. Like, I could see how that could be difficult. Especially if one of those coordinates is moving.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the other thing is that they correlated that tear in the sky with radiation events, right? Which I thought was, very, very interesting.
Very interesting.
But same kind of thing. I think we're going to get more information at the SCU conference here in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I my main questions are, how close was that radiation spike to what they see? Was it, at the exact same time? And like, what would be the chances of that happening just randomly? I think that questions like that, you need more of a baseline to, be examining just normal, boring areas of the sky to really be able to answer those better, I think. But yeah, it's very, very interesting.
What do you think, Jane?
Yeah, that's hard. We need more controls. I had the same question. It's like, are we just, if we're going into it with the alien theory, so that every single anomaly we're looking at through the alien lens, I mean, that's okay. I don't know that it's a waste of time, but it's just very limiting. And It could be that we are just discovering some new things about the universe or the atmosphere or things like that. And it is tricky though, because it's like, okay, so let's say you point your equipment to another point in the sky and you're getting anomalies there. Well, are you assuming then that it's not an anomaly because it's happening in this other part of the sky, or is, again, this more of a widespread issue? So I think with this, it's hard to apply the scientific method when you don't have a clear hypothesis going into the experiment. If we're thinking it's portals, I don't think we have the experiments yet to prove if it's portals. So we're so infantile right now, and we're just but that's how we get there, is by doing things like this. So I think it's very I think we really are starting actual science. I don't agree with the cast of Terror in the Sky that this is stuff has never been done before. I would suspect that there probably have been maybe.
Well, it's never been filmed before, I think.
It's not publicly done before, right? Like for mass consumption, and where maybe there can be some papers written and actual academic books. Not
I mean, I think the closest thing would be like the Hesdalin lights. But I mean, the problem also with the Hesdalin lights is that they wrote papers off of it. There was actual scientific papers written on them. I don't know how mainstream they went in the US, but I know in Europe they were taken very seriously. But there was also no triangulation with the Hesdalin lights like they tried to attempt here on this. It was just one spot, one location for a period of time observing these things. And I think this needs needs multiple locations, because that's the thing that's going to get Mick West to go, okay, that's weird. Because you've got that's why I'm so adamant about, like, I want to see a congressman ask the question, will you commit to the American people to release the full versions of all of these incidences that are already publicly known? There's nothing here that is releasing sources and methods. And Congressman Gallagher absolutely confirmed that. We'll get to that in the second hour, but like most of this should be able to be released to us, which means we should have a second plane with a different angle on at least one of these videos, at least one of them. And that would be very helpful for skeptics. It would be very helpful for believers. It'd be helpful for everyone to get some finality on these 3 videos, because we don't have that yet. The thing that separates these videos from everything else is the pilot testimony that accompanies them. To me, like, that's the biggest difference, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that there was something else that UAP added, which was that the radiation measurement too. They have for just $100, you can assemble this MIT project, the Cosmic Watch, and it will give you a readout that you can measure that tells you how much radiation is currently being measured. And I mean, it's a pretty simple sensor and a pretty kind of almost obvious idea, especially in retrospect. But man, if you had something like that at all the Galileo project sensors, or even like the Sky Hub thing, that's a great way to be, filter out a lot of potentially boring events and just be like, hey, there was a radiation spike and something unusual happened in the sky.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you'd have to repeat that, right? Like that would be something that would have to show up multiple times, the radiation spike with the anomaly, and then you could go, okay, I think it's time to put a radiation detector on everything. But yeah,
well, you kind of need to have those radiation detectors on everything to find those patterns.
Yeah. Okay, so let's score a Terror in the Sky real quick. I mean, obviously there's an entertainment factor, there's a science factor. I don't want to judge it on the third thing, but I think the thing that we also have to ask, and this is really maybe the only question we should ask, is it shareable? Is it something that you would take and go, yo, check this out? Or you need to watch this to change your opinion on me being crazy? Just in a nutshell. Like, is it shareable? I'm putting you guys on the spot.
I think there's more YouTube documentaries and videos right now that people are making, that even our friends are making, that have more like mind blowing or kind of life changing, I feel like, moments in it. And I don't know. Like, I'm not going to, I would not send this. This is why I'm wondering who this is made for. So
Right.
I wouldn't send this like to my mom to like change her mind about anything. I would send it like, hey, here are my friends. Aren't they cool? Like, I think she might have some fun watching it, but I wouldn't,
Yeah.
I don't think it would change her mind about UFOs being real. And everybody who I'd send it to has probably already watched it, I feel like, is, in the community. So who would I share it to? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna light a interest in UFOs to someone who is uninterested, but someone who's already interested and is curious about what kind of scientific endeavors are there to further this. I think that that's the type of audience I think that it would appeal to. But yeah, I think that probably is a fairly small segment of society.
And they've already seen, like, I don't know that there's any, like, I'm trying to think of everybody who'd appreciate watching it. They already know about it. So I feel like it's the people within this sphere, and that means something. That doesn't not mean something. And I'm sure there's a lot of geeky UFO nerds who are not on UFO Twitter, who are not in the UCR stream, who appreciated it in the same way.
Yeah,
it serves purpose. I like, as far as like the countdown clock and stuff, I don't think it moves anything backwards. I think it's a step that needs to be taken, and I'm glad people are taking it.
Yeah. I think it'd be much more shareable if it was a TV show. If it was, hey, this is a cool team. You should turn in and get acquainted with this team and follow them on their future expeditions, because they might find something really cool in one of these seasons. With the documentary, it's like, we kind of already know that they found something interesting, but it's not anything that's, changing the world yet. So
yeah, if it was a show, I'd be like, yeah, I think you should consider watching it. I like the first episode. I'm going to see how the rest of the season goes. But it just felt like there was no cliffhanger. Like,
I felt like one thing that could have grounded this movie more was the backgrounds, the CGI backgrounds. It really took me out of it. Like, you're in California. That house, you could have easily done all of those interviews in that house. I don't know what the production schedule is like, but I just feel like why fake the backgrounds when you have amazing views and sets and sort of vistas everywhere in California. I don't know. It's probably a budget thing, but it just felt like I don't know. The green screen aspect of it really took me out of it. And I think that's, I think the production sort of, I don't want to call them sins, but the things that I go, why'd they do that? Makes me go, I don't want to share this outside of the circle of people that I know already know about it. Like, it's different with a James Fox film. Like, people were sharing that with me before I even ever sent it out to anybody else. Like, they're like, whoa. And I have a feeling this Ariel School documentary is going to maybe leak and be one of those things that is shareable, because everyone's hasn't heard about this. And if it's done the right way, it could be very impactful. And I don't know anything about the producers or anything. The director I've never interviewed or met or talked to, but I heard he's very careful. He's been working on this for a very long time. So the preview looks amazing. Like, it looks really good. So I guess on a scale 1 to 10, what do you give this film?
I'll give it a 7.
7. Okay. Jane?
I'll give it a 6. If it was episode 1 of
I'll meet you guys in the middle. I'll give it a 6.5. And I'm really and I went the 0.5 because, again, like, this is, I think if you're doing this just to do it and there's no camera crew, it's a very easy concept to, not easy, but it's easier to sort of execute. But when you have all of these other elements that you add on top of trying to do an experiment, like the cameras were definitely interfering with some of the instruments that they had on set. So I know that was a big frustration from UAPX. So they were getting readings and it turned out to be a camera or a mic pack or something like that. So this movie is literally figuring out those growing pains because it's the first one to do it. So you know what? I'm going to bump it up to a 7 because I just give them just insane respect for trying to at least trying it. It's a concept, and that's what this show is. This show's a concept show. It's either a concept for a film that could really, if you had the right budget, could do amazingly, or you could do it in a TV show and make it a little lower budget and still have a fun outcome or a fun thing to follow along. So 7. Just honestly, that is just pure, like, that's blazing a trail to me. Honestly, what this film is blazing a trail for future films.
I agree.
And
Yeah, I haven't seen a documentary like it. Yeah.
Different filmmakers and different people are going to take a stab at this concept, and it's just going to get better and force people to up their games. And there you go. Before you know it, we have a great film with something very similar to this. I think that's where I really respect the hell out of Caroline Corey and the production team that put this together, and the UAPX team and all the guys that did this. It was a trailblazing effort. So 7. Now let's break down. We got about a little more than 20 minutes to break down Above Top Secret. The secret behind what was the whole title?
I don't know.
I didn't realize that was just a subtitle.
Yeah, no, there's like a whole title to it. It's on my desktop, but
Inside the Mind of Dr. Greer. And
yeah, that's what it should have been called. Hold on, I'm looking it up right now. But yeah,
Steven
okay.
Greer,
First impression. Well, I looked that up. What are your first impressions, rather, of Above Top Secret?
Yeah, so surprisingly, there are some points made in there that I agreed with, but those points were intermingled with a bunch of unsourced, just people talking about their beliefs with no references or nothing to back it up, and things that were quite honestly outlandish. I thought there were some interesting parts, some interesting points, but yeah, a lot of nonsense.
All right, Jane, first impressions. So, wait, real quick, before you give me your first impressions, the full title of this film is called Above Top Secret, The Technology Behind Disclosure. So, and it was funny because somebody on a live stream asked one of the Blake brothers about the technology, and he's like, why would you, we don't know, like, basically said, we have no idea. Why would you ask us that kind of question? It's like, because you called the name of the movie is called The Technology Behind Disclosure. Like, you put it in the title. Anyway, first impressions, Jane.
A little bit of laughter, but then a little bit of anger because I think there's so many good points that are made in this documentary, and I hate that it is being
like what? Can you be specific on which points you liked?
I mean, just the idea that there could be secret U.S. or I suppose even foreign tech behind some of the things that we're seeing. That there could be agendas that aren't so that could be maybe malicious or at least not as transparent, as they seem. Just that general idea. And you guys know I'm obsessed with the 40s and 50s and the flying saucers, and so I like that there's still like interest in Roswell, and as much as we were joshing on Third Phase of the Moon and past streams and probably had similar reactions in the stream, though I'm not as familiar with them personally as but they anyways, but the Third Phase of the Moon, my point being, was representing a truthful debunking of one of these government UFO videos, right? That we now like Nick West was vindicated, right, in the recent UFO hearing. So I was just frustrated that you have maybe some voices that for whether deserved as credit the mainstream disclosure movement being associated with some of these ideas, because think could discredit the ideas. And I don't think the ideas are wrong. I don't think a lot of the ideas in this are wrong. I think I almost agreed with all the major concepts, but it was just a bunch of stock photos and videos and things taken out of context and no evidence provided for any of the amazing claims in the documentary. I mean, Steven Greer is talking about a murder of these people that will murder you, talking about people being assassinated, how he's trying to save people from being assassinated. And there was not a single like news article or just reference to anything, that we could verify any of these claims. So it was just, so much nonsense. Rather just like that just mixed into these very good ideas though, and so that was frustrating.
Rather, I saw you shaking your head. What you agree with that?
Well, yeah, I do. I mean, like some of the ideas, like they started out talking about how much rockets suck, and we haven't advanced our technology since the 50s, which is totally true. Rocket technology is really old, and it's not going to get us to other planets. We need something else. And they talking about I think they made a really interesting point about the unacknowledged SAPs and how most people don't know what these even are, and they're out of control, which I think
is true.
Take UFOs out of the subject. I think that's true. Why are we having these secret programs that can the Congress people can die off and these programs will still live and no one's being held accountable? Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that should be changed. And halfway through the movie, I thought, hey, Greer and Elizondo seem to be on the exact same page because they're talking about these, illegal programs and unconstitutional programs that are out there and the need to get this information out. I'm thinking, are they both asking for amnesty, for immunity for these people to go out and tell the truth? Although then they go and directly attack Elizondo, so I can see why he was mad about this. But largely it seems like they are making some interesting points.
Yeah. Yeah, there was only one moment where they showed a article or a memo. And even the angle of the memo and the way the photo of the memo was cropped was like you couldn't read parts of it. It's like that was the only proof that they put on the table that any of this is true, and you couldn't even read it. I thought this film should have been called Above Top Secret. Every available stock footage video possible. It was loaded.
Stock footage,
it was well timed. Oh my god, dude! The stock footage in this film, it almost felt like, especially the opening credits, felt like a Scientology film.
I just hooked them with all those quotes.
And also the runtime of this was like over 2 hours. Like, dude, this does not need to be over 2 hours long. When I saw the runtime, I'm like, oh man.
Well, they have the
Sky, which is like so substantive, like comparatively. I mean, I know we have our bones to pick with, I guess, how entertaining it was, but I think that was like an hour and 20 minutes, or I don't know, but it was shorter, and there was way more takeaways and learnings from it.
Well, yeah, one of my favorite moments was one of the Third Phase from the Moon guys complaining about how all the news media are using CGI footage to back the interviews and stuff, and
they've done the exact same thing.
Well, yeah, and even in this movie, there's a lot of things shown that aren't UFOs, that they are pretending to be UFOs. It's hypocritical at best, I think.
At best, like, and that's being mild, really mild. Dude, it's just so funny how they also took credit. I'm trying to remember what they took credit for. I was watching last night, but God, I got to tell you, it was with all the stock footage. They're just hard films to watch. They're just from a production level. Like, it's not good. So it's very difficult for it to keep my attention, especially when there's no corroborating evidence or like you said, Jane, documents or photos. Like when you say what did he say? 10 or 15 people got
A bunch of
murdered. Like
engineers
there was not one
that got a
name.
contract he didn't get, so I guess he could have been murdered. His whole
Yeah,
team, like
but
what he
not
died.
one
Well-
name of one of your friends that died. Like not one.
Well, also he's talking about, oh, I have a dead man trigger set up now to release stuff if bad things happen. Why didn't you release that when your friends died?
Right, right. Also, like, no, you don't. Like, no, you don't.
No, you clearly
dude.
don't.
You don't. You don't.
This is my first impression of Steven Greer, by the way, guys. I told you I didn't watch any documentaries, interviews. I did the same thing I did with Elizondo with him. I just like tuned him out like for years because I figured I would just find out like about him from other people. And so what's interesting,
forced you to watch a whole film about
interesting
him.
is I always liked the ideas that people told me. And so the whole time I was like, well, maybe the Steven Greer guy is somebody that I'm gonna be into, and it's gonna be hard for me because he gets so much crap. But it's the same thing where the ideas in this are pretty solid, in my opinion, where you could show evidence, where you could make a case. And instead, it's just, I have a checklist for how not to get assassinated if you're doing, creating futuristic technology. Like, it was just all over the place. Like, so many red flags. And I will say, though, to those who I suppose are in Greer's camp or like his ideas, I do feel though that to some degree Steven Greer and Elizondo, but in very, very, very different ways, are the same sides of one coin. One coin. David Childress from Ancient Aliens for a bit, some kind of connection between where they both kind of have this fear-mongering take about it, right? Because on Steven Greer, it's be afraid of the government, right? They're going to kill you if you even talk about UFOs. How's that promoting disclosure?
But
So
not only that the government's going to use the UFO threat narrative and put on a false attack coordinated by the U.S. government, but blamed on aliens.
That's definitely fear-mongering.
I think that there might be a little bit something to that, to be honest.
I agree, rather. I agree that there are ideas in there that make sense that you can back up in the sense that we are there was a triangle video that made the rounds around the media and everybody's like, is it aliens? And it wasn't. So I don't think that idea that the government could create this illusion essentially of an alien invasion is a bad idea. There are, believe it or not, there are files way, way, way back in the day that you can kind of try to dig into, but there was none of there. You can't just say that. You can't say, I don't just say that, on streams or in a video and I not back it up. Like you have to prove that.
That's the whole problem is that you could see, like, look, our friend of the show who passed away last year, Kevin Childress, he was in the IG office, and he very, very eloquently laid out how these special access programs and the Department of Energy and specifically has been running this essential pyramid scheme for decades. And the idea of getting billions of dollars to me funneled out of the American tax-paying system and into black project, I'm talking billions, to me at the time seemed far-fetched. The way he lays that out, I could see easily how billions of dollars could go missing. Trillions of dollars went missing. Like it said in the documentary, like that happened right before 9/11. Like they were having a hearing on where the hell did we lose $2.3 trillion? And then that got put way on the back burner after 9/11, obviously, like everything else. But just because there are bits, and this is what this documentary does that's really good. It takes bits of truths and then it paints you this picture as if all of it's true. Mm-hmm. And it's just not. And I think that's what I absolutely despise about this documentary and about Third Phase of Moon overall. This is what they do. They go, we just got this special video from Texas, and here it is. People are saying it's amazing. People are saying that this is game changing. What do you guys think? And they put it on the audience. And of course, nobody's there to answer because it's just the video. But also, like, they don't do any research to be like, okay, did anybody check the sky traffic at that time? Where is that location? Who filmed it? Did you interview the person who did? There's all these questions that are never answered or even put on the table. And we're just supposed to believe that this is incredible because it was sent to them. Okay. Like, no. And then you've also been busted faking videos. You've been caught doing it a few times. Like, it's just hilarious to me that the guys who've been caught for making fake stuff are pitching a fake narrative and calling people fake.
And not only that, they're complaining that the news media is using the government videos instead of their videos, you know?
Not one third phase of moon video has ever been put on mainstream media and taken seriously as a real thing. Like,
and to be fair to third phase of the moon, though, you know, I'm not too aware with their history and, you know, how they actually
kind of like you
making videos and stuff.
I don't have I don't know if I have as much of like the hatred toward third phase of the moon. I think because for years, I mean, before 2017, I mean, the only way you know about UFOs was often from like these big channels, I don't follow them like I think you have, Lou, in recent, like, just.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, third phase of moon, just the history of them, real quick. They were pretty much the first YouTube channel
back in the day
ever cover this.
Yeah. Ever. So they did absolutely cover real sightings. So they're just getting things and posting things is from what I can tell.
Well,
so
they cover real sightings in a way that a broken clock's right twice a day. You know, like every once in a while they're gonna pop on one that is actually real, but because all of the other stuff is like almost crying wolf, people are gonna miss the really good ones.
Yeah, and I would have to write articles debunking. Like, so that's actually, I will say that my experience with a lot of Secure Team and third phase of the moon is that those videos would go viral sometimes and hit national media, and then I would be forced to write an article about it and be like, look, I mean, I can't necessarily prove it's CGI, but there's no other report in Texas of this cube UFO that's hovering. I mean, I can't find anything on it. And I'm pretty sure I would have gotten lots of reports of this cube-shaped UFO hovering over what doesn't look like a city in Texas. So that definitely was a pattern earlier, but I don't know what the batting average is.
They would be picked up by like the Sun or, you know, in some random news stream here. But like, did they?
I think at least a Secure Team video, maybe by far. I feel like there was a big Texas. It was the Texas cases that I would have to go in and be like, oh, what is this?
Those are the ones that pissed you off.
They would never show up in my universe of reports. They would just magically, show up on YouTube. And I definitely would wonder who's leaking. Why am I not getting these CGI videos? I never get CGI videos, and I get lots of videos.
Probably because you call them out. If you did, what were you gonna say?
Well, yeah, I was just wondering, were they caught actually doing the CGI themselves and putting out those videos, or was it just claims that they were promoting kind of clear CGI stuff?
Well, there is like their early stuff. They've taken a lot of this stuff down, but I remember early in the days they would have this like same UFO pop up in different videos from different parts of the country, and it was this triangle that would rotate. These three lights that would rotate. And after like the fifth or sixth one, I'm like, dude, this is the same thing. They're just saying it's in a different place, and it's not. And then there's also a time they got caught. They were here in Los Angeles, and they took a pane of glass, and they reflected these little hanging lights off of the house behind them. And we're trying to like, oh my God, you guys, this is above Los Angeles right now. And it's so stupid because you could
faking, or was it the witness that sent it to them?
Excuse me?
Was it the witnesses that sent
No. This was Blake. This was the cousin brothers faking footage, and because they were narrating it in real time as if it was really going on. So they're acting. They're literally acting and pretending that there's this huge craft above Los Angeles, and it's just a reflecting, like night lights hanging off the house behind them. And what's hilarious is when they end the video, you know how when you end a video, you hit ending record, it shows you the clips of the other videos that you just did before. There's multiple clips of them trying to get it right. Like, it's just so, it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. And so to be known for doing that and then to turn around and demand truth as if you're some sort of messiah that we all need to follow into the land of truth. Believe you that all of these things you say are true.
What does that mean, though, when Third Phase of the Moon is saying this triangle video is not an alien, like ahead of this hearing, right? But then other more apparently credible people are saying, well, this could be aliens. Like, what kind of like weird situation, right? Matrix are we in? Because it's going to be like, think of how tricky that's going to be for the average Joe or Jane who doesn't have all this history, doesn't know the history of Third Phase of the Moon or Luo's on it or all this, and then is having to contend with all this evidence and hear all these different claims. And
I mean, but that's who they're trying to attract, right? The people who don't know. I mean, look at, did you see his house? How many acres? He said, I believe he said it was definitely over 300 acres, but I could have sworn it was in like the 400 acre range. And he's like, it's so I could get secluded, basically away from the maggots that built this empire for me.
Because did you notice the well scene? Okay, I heard, everybody tells me that Steven Greer has this ego and he has this thing about his muscles. So when he was pumping the well and he was like, my wife can't do this. I can do this. Maybe my tallest friend, my biggest friend. I was like, oh my God, people are right. Oh my God. He couldn't go the whole documentary without like somehow like bringing up his
flexing
muscles and flexing his house. And I was like, oh, this is
he's like, if I was him, I'd be proud of my body too, man. At his age, he looks freaking great. For sure. Right? Like, I will give him that.
There's one moment where I kind of felt for Steven Greer too, where he was talking about how everyone teases him for his CE5. You know, I thought that was kind of an authentic moment and kind of humanizing a little bit.
What was this documentary? Was this an authentic? Like, again, what was this made for? Because this wasn't an authentic movie.
This was made for Steven Greer. That's who this was made for. This was made to show Steven Greer, I am loyal. I'm here with you 100%. So much so that I'm going to write, I'm going to direct, I'm going to edit, and I'm going to produce this film. By the way, Third Phase of Moon completely footed the bill, I think, for this whole film. And I had to pay for it last night. That's the part that killed me, is I had to pay for it. I didn't. They got me. Like they got. You know, you win. Essentially, you win. But we had to cover the film, and so because I paid for that film, I feel I definitely have a right to critique the film. But yeah, it was just like. But I think the funniest part, then we'll get on to our scores, was when they got into the pickup truck and they were going to go to a spot to do CE5, and they never got there.
Yeah.
They never got there. They never ended up going to this spot on the ranch. It just kind of didn't go anywhere. It was just Stephen Greenstreet in the truck talking.
Are we talking about Tear in the Sky? He wasn't Tear in the Sky.
Who the hell are we talking about again? Steven Greer in the truck talking. Steven Greer on the ranch pumping water talking. Steven Greer in his office flipping through things that we don't get to look at talking. Steven Greer downstairs by the fireplace talking. You know, like, I think from a cinematic angle, they actually did a really good job. Like, cinematography, you guys with the drone shot, there was one drone shot that flipped up. I'm pretty sure they did the drone shots was them. I'm almost positive it was. But everything else was just literally, it could have been, I think a better name for this movie would have been Above Stock Footage. Above Stock Footage. Because it was loaded with stock footage. Okay, let's review the film. I think from a shareable aspect, no, this film is not shareable whatsoever. I would never share this with anyone. I would never tell anybody to spend their money on this film. That's why we're doing the review, so you don't have to spend your money on this movie. Whereas I think with Caroline Corey, I'd say it's rentable. Definitely rent it. Check it out. Support the director. In this case, I would not recommend it at all. But rather, what do you think?
I'd say I agreed with maybe 25% of it. There was some interesting stuff in there. So I'll give it a 2.5.
Okay. So yeah, 25%. All right, Jane.
I'm going to give it a 1 because I agree with a lot of the ideas in it. I think this movie is damaging to the ideas in it, and I don't like that aspect of all. I want people to keep in mind, UFOs go way back before Roswell. They were airships in the late 1800s. People accused Thomas Edison of building them. There's you guys can find some fun rabbit hole rumors on the Sonora Aero Club. So this idea that human beings can create advanced technology that and it could get passed off as alien technology, which is I think the point in this movie, is a good idea that people should continue to explore. So 0. I think this is I think people should be able to have that idea without being associated with what I'm going to take your word for it, Lou, is a hoax UFO channel, right? Or the ego of some man just talking and rambling on for over an hour and not backing up any claims. I thought it was, and sorry to any Steven Greer fans who, told me to watch his documentaries before I finally did it. But his ideas are good. That's what's so frustrating about it.
I think I share enough frustrations that you guys have in that. And I think that's what the Big Phone Home is about, really. And really what about this whole conversation at its core is about transparency. And I think everyone from Third Phase of the Moon to Goofon, the Cambians, to Lou Elizondo's, to Ryan Bledsoe's, to John Greenwald's, to Stephen Greenstreet's, everybody at their core, I think, believes that this is a transparency issue. This is the government not being honest with us, and so we've kind of turned on each other in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways, I think a lot of these guys have turned in on themselves because I think maybe they've just been they've hit this wall. Because the thing I sympathize with Steven Greer is his efforts in the early 90s to try to legitimize this discussion.
Maybe I would have liked him back then. I don't know.
I think I absolutely loved him back then.
Yeah.
No, he was, he was a force, and I felt like he was really trying to do the right thing. And maybe running up against that wall, he's just like, screw it, man. If I'm going to do this, let's start doing some tours. Let's start charging people money. Let's call it a disclosure project, even though there's no initiative. I love how they're the people need to take the power back, but they do not plan anything or organize a goddamn thing to help people come together and take the power back, like they said multiple times in this film. Please organize something that brings everybody together and does that. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I'm sure you guys can come up with something. And so I'm kind of with Jane. To give it a 0, that is harsh.
I don't think I wish it didn't exist. I don't think this is going to be helpful.
That's okay. I'm giving it a 0 too, because that's
my
sentiments exactly. It's there's no, it doesn't move the topic forward at all. I would never share this with anybody. I'd be embarrassed to watch this, or if somebody somebody pulled this up at my eulogy and said this was my favorite movie, I would come out of the grave and strangle them. So I'm with you, Jane. I wanted to give it a 1, only just so I could save really bad films for 0s. But I'm with you. I'm giving it a 0.
I'm sure it's just the climate too that we're in, the political UFO Twitter climate, that I'm more sensitive to this stuff. Also, that I want to say, where did that narrator come from? That was so rare. Like, felt like suddenly I was watching like a sci-fi movie every once in a while. Like, who is the narrator?
I
Because
don't know.
they weren't.
I didn't see I don't think I saw a credit for a narrator on the front of the film.
It was weird because the narrator I don't think introduced anything. Wasn't it like just
It's
quotes and
usually how
Steven Greer, and then just
narrators are
suddenly there was a
usually
narrator, and it was just very weird.
narrators usually are the first thing you hear when a story begins, you know? Like yeah, they're just I as a filmmaker, I could applaud the effort in the films that people are trying to make. But as a filmmaker, I've also got to be able to tell you your film is not hitting the audience in the way that you think. And it goes with a lot of these sort of, I notice them a lot in films that are trying to really get people to either hate somebody or question them at a level that makes them angry. Like they're trying to get people angry and motivated with anger. And usually those films do not hit the way you think they are. So I recommend a different strategy. Anyway, let's move on. I'm tired of talking about this movie.
Oh, we can move on, but Billy
What?
Carson again brought up a lot of ideas, but just like said a few things. I was like,
Oh
well,
my God, Billy Carson.
talking about UAP being unidentified aerial vehicles, like no, phenomenon is not a vehicle. And then he was saying about UFOs not being a threat. That was also that was an idea though that was pretty prevalent in this documentary. And I just throwing it out there, guys, like Colares, Brazil, Cash Landrum incident in Texas, even the Aurora, Texas incident. There are many cases of UFOs, literally unidentified lights, objects causing harm. They could potentially be threatening. So I know that that plays into the fear mongering, but you have to be truthful. Even down in the UFO event I recently went to was a case in South Texas, which apparently mysterious lights just destroyed a construction site and terrified the 8 construction workers. So I just don't think that's genuine to say the entire UFO phenomenon is not a threat.
Right. No, that's fair. I think they were just really pushing that threat narrative because he came from Lou Elizondo at first. You know, the whole the word threat was put into the name of the program. Personally, I think one of the reasons why they changed it from ATIP to UAPTF, they took the word threat out of it. And I think part of that is they were like, whoa, people don't like you guys calling these things a threat. Maybe you should chill on that. You know, if we want to get them to, take this seriously. Not everything has to be a threat. And I think that was an adjustment on there. And I don't know for sure, but that's what it felt like a little bit, because that threat narrative from the phenomenon really went away about a year and a half, 2 years ago. They kind of dropped it. And I think it's because the community is like, stop saying that stuff. Like, stop doing it, because it's not fair and it's not accurate. But in some cases, like you just pointed out, it is accurate. They can be seen as a threat. And it kind of makes me think like, it's definitely not as simplistic as this, but wouldn't shock me if whatever these things are just as diverse and just as seeped in difference of opinions like we are. I wonder if if they're emotional and petty and all of those emotions that get people like us in trouble all the time.
The more complex we evolve, the more advanced we become, the more emotions we collect. Not the less. Right? We can become angrier. Right? But also, I want to put this out there. A lot of those threatening UFO cases also happen to be some of the most well documented. And so if those threatening UFO cases are not alien, okay, fill in the gap, fill in the blank. Okay, we're in a conundrum here. Okay, so that's why a lot of these ideas of okay, could some of this strange tech be ours? We need to keep having those ideas, because you have to understand we're kind of backing intelligence and government into a corner here, and it can't be both.
Right. No, it can't. I don't think it can be both either. But the problem with that, though, is once you start backing them into that corner, then what explains those stories from the 50s or the 40s or even
That's why
it could be both.
Painters,
that's why
could
the
be
idea
both.
is, I think, in Above Top Secret, I think that's kind of what the point was, is that this is there's a long history of this, and so that's why I hated it. It presented those ideas the worst
in the worst way. Yeah, it's not that it's not okay to think about these things.
No.
I think that's that's the thought experiment, right? Like the point of the film is to challenge the way possibly that you think about Lou Elizondo or the space race or what the government's doing or whatever. It's supposed to challenge that thinking, but I just don't think this film accomplishes that. I think it like scratches it here and there, but it doesn't back it up with facts.
And there's no solution.
There's no solution.
It's such a positive, like, we're just doing science, so we're gonna find out, like, if these are ours or not. Just like do the science.
It's just funny because
solution and Above Top Secret, yeah.
Well, but they do scream a solution. They just don't tell you how to do it. They're like, we need to take the power back.
Go storm Area 51, right?
Yeah, like they were showing people storming Area 51. Like, come on, is that what you really mean?
Yeah.
Like, are there billions of people at a point where they're ready to storm, or not even storm, but just even occupy, like a plot of public space, whether that be the Washington, the lawn there under the Washington Monument, or somewhere in DC, or in front of the gates of Area 51. Like, if 1 million people showed up there, that would be pretty cool, and the government would have to pay attention and maybe answer some questions. But what were you gonna say, Riley?
Yeah, new sponsor for the Big Phone Home 3.
Yeah. Could be.
I think we just disagree, but yeah, we do have the same. We want the same thing. We want the
same thing. I mean, we want the same thing. Like I said, at the core of this, it's a transparency issue. Everyone wants more transparency. Everyone wants more truth on this. Everyone. So I can't blame them for the effort. I just think the execution was very poor. That's all. And I'm sure they'll say something or write something, or I'll hear something from one of these good folks, just really high caliber character folks.
Hey, if you like Steven Greer, and I'm not like a fan of this documentary, it doesn't mean I dislike you, as a person. Yeah. Don't take it personally, right?
Yeah, well, unless of course they make it personally,
Well, that's what I'm sure they're inclined to take things very personally.
All right, let's get on to our new segment, shall we? Rather, are you ready for this new segment?
Let's do it.
All right, let's put you here. Let's go ahead and play our intro. Again, this intro video was submitted from you, the people. We put a call out there to put together a promo intro for Rather's new segment called Rather Rants. And so here's the promo you guys sent in. And by the way, thank you everyone out there. A little harsh, but yeah, you be the judge. Hi there, Internet. Welcome to another segment of Rather's Rant. A once-a-month segment starring America's favorite skeptic, Mr. Ratherby Squidding. Some have called him a low-life piece of or a sloozer who dwells in a triple dungeon in Sarasota. But we just call him Squiddy. Follow Squiddy as he discusses mysteries of science, faster than light travel, the James Webb Telescope, and mouth. And of course, alien poop. Without further ado, the one, the only, Ratherby Squidding.
I feel like I recognize the narrator a little bit. I wonder who sent that in. But
I don't know. I don't know who sent it in, but that was amazing work. I mean, amazing. It felt like you didn't like Rather very much, but A+ on the effort. That was some good stuff.
Thanks for the intro. That was setting me up well. But on to the rant. I'm going to try to keep this one a little bit less offensive. Hopefully, I don't rub anyone the wrong way with this. But it kind of goes towards a theme of Above Top Secret, where they talk all about there's a conspiracy to hide UAP tech because we're going to destroy ourselves with it, or the unlimited energy is going to challenge the establishment and the rich oligarchs who own the oil. And that's the reason why everything is so secret. But I think that's really missing the point. And that's we're really on the verge of a technology like that. And it doesn't require UFOs. It doesn't require 0-point energy or any exotic means of energy or physics. We're about there, and that's with nuclear tech. Nuclear tech gets a really bad rap because of fission bombs and radioactive fallout. It is dangerous, but that's just fission. Fission has these horrible byproducts that are very dangerous and you don't want everywhere. But there's another kind of nuclear energy, and that's fusion, which is clean. It has radiation, but the radiation doesn't persist. It's created just by hydrogen gas. So it's the source for this energy is abundant. It's everywhere. And, we're about to figure this out. There's the ITER in Europe, which is a big multi-billion-dollar project to create a nuclear fusion reactor. And if that's accomplished, that's it. That's free energy. That's pretty much humanity's energy problems solved. And, I think we probably could have been at a point where we have free energy, where we have fusion reactors, if we would have just invested in this technology back in the 60s instead of being so afraid of it and not wanting to advance it because of concerns. And there are legitimate concerns like, being able to destroy ourselves. If cold fusion was actually possible and anyone could create a fusion explosion in their backyard, yeah, that would be concerning. And there might be that possibility. There was a cold fusion. There was a paper by a couple scientists in '89 who made a paper saying that, yeah, we figured out cold fusion. It ended up not being able to reproduce that. And the result of that '89 kind of kerfuffle or whatever kerfuffle was that it created a huge amount of stigma for fusion resources or for fusion researching. No one wanted to follow that up and be embarrassed because everyone was kind of piling on those scientists in '89 and embarrassing them. And, I think that's a stigma we should be addressing just along with UAP stigma, which was, we should eliminate the fusion stigma. We should be researching fusion energy. And that's, a clear path, a path with known physics that could solve all our energy problems, could eliminate our dependence on oil, and could potentially fuel our spacecraft to Pluto and beyond. So yeah, that's my rant. I think we should be focusing on fusion.
Woo! Woo!
Thank you.
Thank you. Rant coming in hot. Woo! Look at this. Even nerves.
No, it's true. It's very yeah. No one talks about fusion.
$200.
Thank you, Steve.
Rather's rant. Oh my!
Put that to ITER. Put that to fusion research, Lou.
Woo! You stole my take, Rather. I've said that so many times. Like, this is why I don't think it's an energy thing when it comes to the military. This is why I think, damn, Jesus, dude, $200. Holy cow. That's just thank you, dude. Thank you. Holy Jesus. Damn. Sorry. Dude, if we can have nuclear power on our submarines and our warships, and that helps fuel them and propel them through the water, and they're guaranteed for over hundreds of years, why are we not using that application all over the world? And it's safe. It's not like the nuclear reactors from the 60s and the 70s and the 50s that melted and blew up. And even the one in Fukushima, it was an old style reactor. And once the seawater breached, like, it was over. And there are ways now. They have the technology to where even if the reactor, that's the fear, is a major earthquake, right? And then the reactor loses power and then it overheats. There are ways to subsidize that, or at the very least give you a very long time to get to that reactor and supply power to it again, so it doesn't cause a meltdown that's similar to like 3 Mile Island.
Well, and even those concerns are only relevant for fission reactions, because if you had a fusion reactor, a working fusion reactor, you could have an earthquake, blow that up, and there's just hydrogen gas release. There's no harm to the environment at all. And it was pretty interesting if you look into the history of Project Orion, which was a program into nuclear-powered spacecraft. There was a debate among the scientists. Some of them were saying, man, we really need to figure out how to make fissionless fusion bombs, how to make a fission or fusion bomb without the priming fission explosion that would,
Right.
because when you have a fission that makes a fusion, you have radioactive things everywhere. There's half the scientists who are like, yes, that would be awesome. That would allow us to go to the stars, go beyond, do all these crazy things. The other half of the scientists were thinking that could be the end of us all, because that would increase nuclear proliferation. And if anyone could just make a fusion bomb, humanity might be doomed. So I'm more optimistic than those scientists, but I think that it is still a concern.
Well, this was the kind of stuff that Stanton Friedman was working on, right? Like, he was working on a nuclear fission airplane and jets. Like, that's the stuff he said he was working on. That was in the 50s and 60s. So
yeah, that might have been Project Orion. I'd have to double check.
It could have been. Dennis Bank. Oh, by the way, we have. Hold on a second. We Mick Best had put this in here for you. $10 donation. Says it's risky letting Rather express an opinion. If it ends up on another week of people throwing custard pies at each other on Twitter, then I'm just gonna set my pubes on fire instead.
Leaving my UFO Twitter drama rant for next week or 2 weeks from now.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. I'm sure we'll get it in there. David Altman. David Altman. Yeah, he was one of the producers on the film. Yeah, I think he's
a member of UAPX, right?
Yeah, was a member of UAPX. But David, please go to the first half hour. I think we were fair. I gave it a 7. I don't want to give the whole review. Just go check it out. I think we did all right. I think you guys did an amazing.
Yeah, the infinity times better score from Lou than above
way
top
better, way better than above stock footage. Way better than that film. Okay, Cosmic Kev 91. Have you put a film? Have I put out a film? Yes, I have. My film got into the Los Angeles Latino International Film Festival here in Los Angeles. Yes, it's a short film. I have directed films. I have written films. So I know the film process pretty well. I've helped get other films in the festival, helping co-write and star in other films. So yes.
What's the name of the film, Lou, if people want to look it up?
So the name of the film, I don't know if you can find it online by the title, but get ready. The title is called Sácalo con Take It Easy USA. That's the film I directed. The film I was in, I wrote a film with my friend Nick that starred, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting his name, Lloyd from Entourage. And so that film was for Funny or Die. We got that into a couple of small comedy festivals. So yeah, I've written a film. I've also put terrible films together. It's you're not going to get them right, even when you get them right. And you could listen to Quentin Tarantino. I mean, you could go back and re-edit a film a billion different times and wish you could add certain things or wish you had thought of certain things, especially when you're in the editing process. So definitely have. Let's hear. Okay, so now let's get to our question from Dennis here, who says, or it's not a question, says the only drawback of a fusion containment failure is the gamma ray burst. What say you?
Yeah. I mean, if you're standing close to a fusion containment thing that gets blown up, you're going to have some problems, but it's not something that's going to, pollute the ocean or stay in the area indefinitely. The gamma ray bursts are just, it happens. And then if you're not there, you're not going to get hurt. It's not something that's going to have the systemic, things like nuclear fallout, nuclear isotopes, right, and that fission produces.
And I mean, I'm with you. And I know there's people are really split when you say the name Bill Gates, but Bill Gates did do a really cool documentary before pre all of this weird stuff that Bill Gates is being talked about now. He did a really cool documentary on Netflix, and it was all about his effort of doing exactly that, creating a nuclear fission reactor. And he had gone around the world and around the country to find scientists that were going to improve the technology, because he said exactly what you said. We already have the tech. Like the UFOs things is not about tech. The tech exists. It's already there to provide free energy for everyone. It exists. It's real right now. And there's ways to perfect it, but because of the stigma that comes along with nuclear, governments, especially the US government, is afraid to subsidize the research into it. So it got to a point where they had the designs, they had everything that they wanted to build, but the United States would not let them do it. They ended up having to negotiate, I think it was with China, if I'm not mistaken, and they were going to build it in China. And then I think COVID hit, and everything just fell through for it. But
just
people
hoping they get that back.
They're talking about
what do the aliens say about nuclear fission? That's the question. Are we hypothesizing that some of the UFOs are already using like nuclear fission technology, right? Or have we, like, the transparency that we all want, into some of these, like, I think private conversations that have probably happened between like intelligence and scientists and things like that.
Yeah, are any of you watching the Showtime show, The Man Who Fell from Earth, or Man Who Fell to Earth?
No. Worth
an interesting. What's that?
Worth the time?
It's a fun show, but in that, it is the aliens have advanced fusion technology, and that's kind of the part of the premise of that show. So
that's cool.
If that's any guide, the answer is yes, Jane. They are using it.
It's just whether or not does fusion energy, and I imagine it would, but I just, in my brain, I can't picture fusion energy propelling a rocket into space. I think once it gets up there, I can see the fusion taking over. But are we at a point where you think we could harness that kind of energy to propel something as heavy as a Falcon 5 rocket into space? And if so, why is Elon not sort of pursuing that?
See, that interesting. One of the DIRs that was released from OSAF was talking about that exact thing, about making nuclear-powered spaceships. And they had you touched on a great point. They were talking about how once you're in space, you could make a fusion reactor to propel the spacecraft pretty easily, in part because of the vacuum in space and being able to harness that energy. His proposal for getting it through the atmosphere into space would be to, instead of having a self-contained impetus for the fusion reaction, would be shining giant lasers on the fusionable material to get the energy to make the fusion reactions happen like that. So there'd be ground-based lasers that would be giving a ton of energy into the ship to actually get it to take off on fusion. But he has a whole proposal, a whole paper outlining how he'd do it, and he published it in a peer-reviewed journal. It all does seem to check out.
Interesting.
Wikipedia said, during the Cold War, maybe you were hinting at this rather with your timeline, but during the Cold War, the U.S. and Soviet Union researched nuclear-powered bomber aircraft, but they failed, I guess, to create operational.
And I think that the partial nuclear ban treaty in the 60s kind of stopped a lot of those efforts.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, that makes sense. I mean, and also, dude, it's just
nuclear deterrence.
I think our first, I wish we would just look back at that period and go, okay, see what we did wrong there. Clearly baby steps. All right, sorry about messing that up. But I'm pretty sure we got a good handle on it this time. You guys should trust us, because this is the way to go.
Nuclear powered missiles as well. There were designs for those, which
well, let's get into the Pat McAfee and Mike Gallagher. Representative Mike Gallagher was on the Pat McAfee show. So if you're unfamiliar with Pat McAfee, I've got one clip here that pretty much sums up the entire show, and that's the clip we're going to start out with, and then we'll get into what Mike Gallagher said. But I enjoy this show. I think it's a fun sports show. But I've talked about Pat McAfee on this show before. Very meatheady. He's a former football player, but he's one of the smarter of the guys in the league. I mean, this guy is changing sports podcasting and sports radio. Just the whole landscape of it is being changed because of the contracts that this guy's generating for himself and the people that are on the show. It's incredible. So when I say call him a meathead, I mean that in the most loving sense possible. He's just a football player, and the show's got the co-host is a former NFL football player, and I think is AJ Hawk. So let's play this first clip so everybody can get an idea who Pat McAfee is.
Green. Representative of Green Bay, Wisconsin, Ladies and gentlemen, Congressman Mike Gallagher.
I had to turn down them screaming. But every time they say Marine, they all yell, hoorah. It's very masculine, pretty funny. This guy does zero F's given when he does his show. And what's cool about this, what I appreciate is when congressmen and heavy hitters like this go on his show, and they do go on his show. I mean, we got two pretty cool stories out of the best quarterback on the planet, and Aaron Rodgers, about his UFO experiences. So that was pretty cool. But regardless of that, is that I feel like this show is a very good representation as to what Americans think about this conversation and how they pay attention to it. I've got the link for this. It's a half-hour conversation. I clipped out a lot of the questions from Pat McAfee, but I recommend, I've got the clip in the description below. Go check out the entire interview and listen to the questions from Pat McAfee. They reminded me a lot of sometimes how I ask questions. They're not very pointed. Sometimes there's like 14 questions in one question because you're trying to paint like an idea in your head about what you're talking about, and you hope it formulates into a question. And sometimes it doesn't quite do that. But the congressman handles it really well. And I think this is it's a really cool representation of I think how this conversation is going to start hitting normies, as Jazz likes to call them. So let's listen to, now this first clip I'm going to play is when I saw this, it changed my mind on, remember how we were discussing on Tuesday, how I thought the Wilson Davis notes, that was like, for me, that was the lowest moment of the hearing. And then I heard Mike Gallagher on this show give his explanation as to why he submitted that. And I was like, okay, if that's what you're going to do, I'm good with it. So I'm curious to know what your take is, but let's listen to what he's got to say. And this quote is from later in the interview, but I put it up in front because I definitely wanted to get to it, because I don't think we're going to get to all the clips that I edited for you guys. But let's go ahead and play this one.
If it is just a very small group that you're talking about, what was, you even mentioned it earlier, that potentially a part of the government that we have never heard of is working on something. Does that take place? Isn't that like kind of what the CIA does anyways?
Well, you have all these very highly compartmentalized programs that only certain people are read into. And in some cases that exists for good reason, but it's quite possible that there is sort of one arm of the government doing something and only 10 people are read into that program. And another arm of the government that's doing something tangentially related to that is not aware, just because they don't have the need to know for that program. I mean, this happens all the time. I mean, you think about just the complex mess that is our national security bureaucracy, right? You have 18 different intelligence agencies, you got DOD, you got this, you got that. And so part of this investigation going forward is going to have to involve breaking down those barriers. The reason I introduced the Wilson memo, and again, I don't know if it's true, right? My whole theory on this is that if it's not, this should be the easiest thing for the Defense Department to disconfirm, right? Talk to Wilson, talk to Eric Davis, talk to everybody else that's still alive that's mentioned in that memo, and figure out if there's anything legitimate in there. And if not, all right, then we can remove that and we can focus on what remains. But the fact is, as you saw yesterday, they weren't even aware of it.
I think that's a pretty damn good reason. I mean, I don't know if it's the
people
first
have
thing.
to. Yeah.
Go ahead.
People have talked to Admiral Wilson and Eric Davis, and they both deny it, right? So I don't know why they would tell.
Well, it's not the
answer to the government.
It's not the same as Congress, though. At least if Congress does it, you get an official answer on it. And at least from a lawmaker's perspective, you can be like, okay, this is all BS. Let's move on to the stuff that's actually worth our time. I looking back at it, it's not as, it seems a little more strategical than anything. I think it's if anything, it's adding more clarity to the conversation, because if they look at it and they say, okay, they interview Wilson, they interview Davis, and they figure out, there's nothing to this. They could just, it's now they know, and now we know. And so it's either going to make UFO Joe really happy the information that comes out of the Department of Defense, or it's going to piss them off to no end. Either way, I mean, I think from a Congress perspective, if they could go, okay, we never have to listen to this ever again, I think that's useful. And I also think it would add a lot of clarity for someone like me who actually wants to know, okay, are these documents true? Because if they are true, they do reveal, like Kevin Childress was laying out for the Department of Energy, a way to get money from the federal government and put it into secret special access programs without going through congressional approval. And that's a problem. That's a problem. Like that's something they should have talked about in a above stock footage. Like that's where they should have gone with it. But now the Congress is going there with it. And I think, again, like I'm okay with looking at this and go, yeah, I think I got this wrong. Like I think that was actually a pretty damn good question. And now it's on the record. So now they have to look into it, And so, I mean, would have been the first thing I go to? No, probably not. But I think once we get deeper into some of these quotes from him, we'll start to understand a little bit about his knowledge of this conversation. And so, we get a second, but what are you guys' thoughts on sort of what he's saying about this, Jane?
I think that's I think that's fair. I think anytime we can clear something up, I don't know if the people that think, and that's not something I've heavily researched, the Wilson memo or really have a hot take on, but I'm guessing the people who are invested in that wouldn't change their mind if there was an official interview, if there's already been unofficial interviews. So I don't really know who it would be clearing things up for at the end of the day, but I'm guessing, but I think he's probably well-intentioned, I would guess. I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know enough to think about all that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if Congress looks into it and they come back and they say, yes, it's true, I mean, yeah, that would be huge. My guess is that Congress, if the DOD even does look into it, they're going to come back and say, no, it's false, and no one's going to believe them. And it seems a little bit weird because, a lot of people are claiming, just because Gallagher put it into the congressional record, that like gives it some sort of credibility or credence, which, yeah, it doesn't, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean,
there's a small chance that they come back and say, yeah. So, I mean, I don't see a huge problem with it, but.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts. I mean, I don't know if it helps as much as people think. We'll find out. I mean, I think at the very least, they're going to look at it and try and have an answer for him because he seems pretty adamant about getting answers to the questions that he asked specifically. But let's get to the next clip. Let's see what else you got to say.
Pertains to the hearing yesterday. Listen, I'm new to this debate. Like I don't bring particular UAP expertise, but I've done basic research. I've probably done about 5 hours worth of research. So I asked what I thought were basic questions.
So you have 5 hours of basic research. I don't know how he stumbled on Wilson Davis in 5 hours.
Yeah, Wilson's. That's why I'm wondering, like, how new are you?
I think a staffer said, "Hey, check this stuff out."
And UFO Joe was like, "Hey, check this stuff
maybe
out."
UFO Joe's a staffer. I mean, that's possible. Or maybe it was a question fed by someone we know, like maybe a Lou Elizondo or something like that. Because I think Lou in some post hearing interviews has said something along the lines of like, yeah, that'll prove whether or not there's criminal activity going on when it comes in this discussion. So who knows? It could have been a question that maybe was fed in there by them. Maybe they have good connections with Gallagher. He's in Wisconsin, so it's possible that especially considering he's a Marine, so he's a veteran as well. So that maybe you could get in the door that way. But yeah, it's for 5 hours of research. It just seems. If I had a question for him, it'd be like, how did you stumble upon Wilson Davis in 5 hours?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a really complex issue to understand in 5 hours.
Yeah,
like,
I'm pretty sure. Wouldn't the JFK memo come up first?
Yeah. I mean, there's a million things I feel like would come up first before that.
Right.
And even if you did get into that,
Roswell memo.
You could spend 5 whole hours trying to get to the bottom of it and trying to figure it out. And you'd still be confused, or you'd still, even if you weren't confused, you'd just be like, I don't know if there's anything concrete here. So Anyway, but yeah, it's just interesting to say, he's 5 hours. Like, okay, all right, well, we'll see what else he's got.
Just modestly familiar with the literature, and they couldn't answer any of those questions. I mean, they're suggesting that there's nothing that the government has done from 1969, when we shut down Operation Blue Book, to when we set up some of these new programs, ATIP. I'm sorry, that doesn't withstand basic scrutiny. I do not believe that at all. And then I asked about the Malmstrom incident in 1967. They seem not to know what the hell I was talking about. And then finally, I asked about this memo that's been floating around out there, and they also seem not to know what the heck I was talking about. So the whole thing was incredibly confusing. I'm not sure we got any closer to the truth. And listen, I appreciate this effort to destigmatize the discussion, but until the Defense Department starts speaking in simple and direct, plain English, and answering questions, we're just going to spin everybody up, or we're going to be spinning around in circles. So I left very frustrated, and I'll stop here. But though I started off as a casual sort of observer in this whole UAP debate, now I'm so pissed off that I'm not going to let it go until they answer my question.
I mean, that's
I totally disagree with him.
Well, what do you mean? In what way?
I think all those questions were
they were fringy.
Well, yeah, and they I wouldn't expect the UAP task force or those people to have any answers for those. I think that we need to be focused on what are you seeing today, and is what you're seeing today, unambiguously weird, as Zach Seichi would say. And if that's true, if they find out that yes, we're seeing stuff that are unambiguously weird, really weird stuff, then I think you start digging that trail back into when did the U.S. government know, and when how did they know it, and then you start asking questions about the Wilson documents and these SAP groups and other UFO programs. But without that foundation of we are seeing crazy, unambiguously weird stuff today. I don't think that going back is helpful.
I think if he frames the questions, like for example with Maelstrom, he could say, hey, in 1969 at Maelstrom Air Force Base with so-and-so, these nukes were shut down. Have we ever seen anything like that happen in the since ATIP started, or since this program was developed? And then that's a more sharper question.
Yeah, or how many of those 400 were around nuclear things? Yeah.
Right. So that way you can inform them on the history in case they don't know, they don't look stupid, and they can kind of get an idea of what Maelstrom is, while at the same time asking a question. Hey, have nuclear weapons been shut off by these things to your knowledge? Or if you're going to bring up the Wilson memo, the Wilson Davis documents, it's like, hey, there is these documents floating around that purport, these secret programs that are outside of congressional approval. Do you know of any programs that are working on exotic material or exotic technologies that fall within that? There are ways to ask those questions, but you're right. I think the ways they were asked, how could you expect them to know these things, especially if they're not, in the community? Like, you would have to be in the community to know about Wilson Davis. You would have to be in the community, and I hate to admit this, to know about Robert Salas and his Maelstrom experience. Like, even though he's done the press conferences at the press club, nobody knows about that stuff. Nobody knows about that stuff outside the community. So the questions were okay, but they just weren't poignant enough. And so I think when his shock is like, and they don't know the answer to anything, I think you're kind of right. Like, that's expected, dude. The things you brought up were a little crazy. But with that said, maybe they'll go back and they'll learn about Maelstrom. They'll go back and they'll learn about the things that he put on the table. So that way, because it's clear he wants the answers to those questions. He thought they were really good questions, but I think that was more staffers feeding him the questions.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, that people were feeding him. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 5 hours. I don't think he's lying when he says he's only done 5 hours of research. That seems sincere. So yeah, he's probably.
But I do
getting
believe
wet.
he's lying that his 5 hours of research led him to Wilson Davis.
Yes, I
Yeah.
completely
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
understand it.
Well, yeah.
Nevertheless.
Guided research, I think it probably
Rather
was.
he borrows
Guided
from that
research.
podcast though, and when Rather's doing his rants, we should both be standing up, Lou, like
Yeah, agreed. I
react.
think you're right.
I like that effect. With the interview.
We just had a $10 donation from somebody here. Did you flag that one? If you can find it, but this is from G. Wessis. Coulthard Zabel tweeted yesterday that the Wilson Davis doc is not fake. Quote, I'm so tired of people knowing the truth about Wilson Davis docs. Put Wilson Davis on the hot seat and let's finally end this debate.
I want to know if it's real.
I'd like to know if it's real too. Again, like I've said many times, I don't know if this is something I would put. I don't know if this is something I would put in front of a senator, but now it has been, and apparently that senator thought it was good enough to take to a public hearing, so it's there. I mean, we're in it. It's there. Okay, so we've got a few minutes left in the show. Let me get real quick. I had a poll question. And it looks like we've got the answer to our poll here. Let me pull it up. Okay, so the poll question. Whoa, what just happened? I just lost my own show here.
You're still here. We see you.
Here.
No. I'm looking at the poll on another window here, and I can't see you guys, but I know I'm still there. Okay, so the poll question was: should we move the show to 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time or leave the show as is at 3 p.m.? So let's see here. How many people voted? 203 votes, and 58% of the audience, 56% of the audience, 203 votes is voting for 3 p.m. It's almost right down the middle.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, we've got the opportunity to move the show to 5 o'clock, you guys. So I'm wondering. I mean, it's just the audience is just split right down the middle, pretty much. So now you're kind of putting pressure on me.
That doesn't make it easy for us.
It doesn't make it easier for us. But I mean, look, we were gonna do the show a little later. It's more of a prime time slot, as we're told. I think we're a prime time show. I don't think of us as anything less than a prime time show, right? We're prime time. But 3 o'clock seems to work it for everybody. Man, I'm on the fence. You guys. I feel like 5 o'clock has a nicer ring to it. It also gives me a little more time to do stuff during the day. I don't know why I'm wasting showtime with this, but
we thought there was going to be a resounding answer either way.
I thought there was going to be a resounding,
decision,
yeah, and this has actually just caused more confusion. Anyway.
Maybe we could do another poll, or like with another on Twitter or something.
Yeah, maybe. We'll do a poll on Twitter. We'll do a poll on Twitter.
I guess people could vote.
Bill, I'm sorry. I thought I was going to have an answer for you at the end of the show. I'm going to have an answer for you after I put a poll on Twitter, and I also put a poll on Patreon just to get Patreon members' opinions. I want to make sure I'm making the right decision, but you guys let me know. I mean, it would basically be an 8 p.m. East Coast start time versus a 6 p.m. East Coast start time. The only thing I don't like about it is that it might interfere with playoff basketball for me, which would be a huge bummer. But it's only once a week, so I don't know. I mean, that reminds me, the Heat are playing tonight, so I don't know if I'm going to make our Discord. I'll be honest with you. The game pretty much starts right after the show. Anyway, we'll figure it out. But I appreciate you guys answering the poll, even though I'm sorry we're not kind of using the suggestion.
Valuable data.
No, it's data. It's data that we're putting into a file, and then once the other data has been collected, we will make a decision. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your votes. I appreciate you for caring enough to even give your opinion. All right. So with all of that, you guys, I think we'll start wrapping this up. I want to get into some more clips from Mike Gallagher, but we ran out of time.
I'm glad you included that link in the description, though. It sounds like, I don't know, a pretty entertaining interview.
Yeah.
I think it's good to get the newbie perspective. I know that a lot of folks who are in UFO Twitter, like the UAP hearing was I feel like people were positive about it, poked fun, but were positive about it. But if you looked at UFOs and the conversation when the hearing was happening, it was all negative. I didn't see a single citizen, somebody outside of UFO Twitter positively reacting to that. It was all just like, why are we spending time and money on this instead of X, Y, Z, no matter what, whether it was Democrat, Republican, like whatever. I didn't see any love for the hearing whatsoever. So we have to remind ourselves that there's people who've only done 5 hours of research.
Not even.
Stigma's still there. Yeah.
No, here's what I've heard behind the scenes, that this caught the attention of lawmakers. Like this really did catch their attention. But I agree with you, Jane. I think from an optics standpoint, publicly speaking, people are like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you got Ukraine, you've got this movement within the United States to get rid of women's right to choose, which is crazy to think we're even having that conversation in 2022, but here we are. There's race issues, there's all sorts of issues.
Baby formula outage, I saw that a lot. People talking about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, gasoline prices, like, people are hurting. But here's the thing, and this is something that Congressman Gallagher addresses in this, is that Congress is supposed to do multiple things. They're supposed to be able to address all of these things, not just one, so and the problem with this discussion is that there's never going to be a good time to have it. There's always going to be something going on. That's not an excuse to not have the conversation. And if the conversation leads, it's funny. I was talking to a friend earlier today, and he said that it's the most bipartisan issue maybe of our lifetimes. And that's crazy to think, let alone say out loud, but it's kind of true. Like, there was both Democrats and Republicans in this hearing. And both,
could you tell who was who based on their questions? I couldn't.
Nope. You couldn't.
Usually you can. Usually it's clear as day.
Usually you can. Yeah, that's true. That's
but
very,
maybe
very
people
true.
want to fight right now. They don't want to agree about things.
Well,
so it's like, that's not fun. That's not divisive enough, right? For me.
That's where the truth is right there, is that people just want to argue. Like, it's so funny. We get sort of labeled as the show that concentrates on drama, even though it's probably been like 6 or 7 shows where we've had to stop the flow of the show and address something that happened out of 300, like that's, I think that's a pretty good percentage. But regardless of that, the shows that are the most dramatic get the biggest viewers. And it's just so funny, because all of the people who are saying, won't watch that, won't participate in that, you did participate in it, and the numbers are, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, like, I'm sitting here, like, if you really thought I was in this for the clicks and the likes and the shares, I would do that show every week. And trust me when I tell you, I can do that show every single week. Believe that. And I have a feeling there's going to be some big mouths out there that challenge that. They're already talking. But we'll see. I mean, I'm just saying, mess with the bull, get the horns, man. But it's just funny. People are hypocrites. Like, they love the drama. They love it. They absolutely love it. They love to hate it, and they'll tune in for it every time. But with that said, we're not that show. Like, that's not our MO. That's not what we want to do. But anyway, guys, do you have anything coming up on your channel before we get out of here?
Got the Thing review next week. I know there's rumors, Lil Elizondo apparently said there's some triangle UFO video out there. I've been tracking those pretty religiously for like a decade now. And on Twitter, you can see I linked to some triangle highlights that maybe you aren't aware of. And I think there's some explanations. I think there's some possible explanations for some of them, but you guys can let me know.
Yeah, I'm looking into a method of detecting UFOs that no one here has heard about before. So stay tuned to Rather Be Squidding to learn about that.
Oh, there you go. All right, guys. I want to say thank you to KGRADB, Das Tapes. Watch for the show on iTunes and Spotify. Thank you to the Patreon members, YouTube members, super chatters, moderators. This $200 super chat. Holy macaroni. Let me just bring it up one more time because it is absolutely amazing that someone would even consider putting that kind of money, NeuroStream, into our show. I truly appreciate it, man. I cannot thank you enough. And that's it, man. Have a great weekend. I hope you guys enjoyed the Miami Heat beating the Boston Celtics, and we'll see you next week. Love you all. Take care. Peace. Hi there, Internet. Welcome to another segment of Rather's Rant. A once-a-month segment starring America's favorite skeptic, Mr. Ratherby Squidding. Some have called him a low-life piece of or a sloozer who dwells in a triple dungeon in Sarasota. But we just call him Squiddy. Follow Squiddy as he discusses mysteries of science, faster than light travel, the James Webb Telescope, and now, and of course, alien poop. Without further ado, the one, the only, Ratherby Squidding.